Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Insight. We are going to talk about that Community Shield win and what it can mean for Arsenal's season. What we learnt tactically from Arsenal that could maybe benefit us in what's going to be a long campaign, challenge for the title, the Champions League and more. Of course, we want to be competitive all fronts, and Arsenal showed that in a 1-1 draw over 90 minutes and a penalty shootout win, they could be ready for when it comes to that really crunch time of the season. Maybe you can't read too much into the Community Shield, but like I said, there are some things tactically that were very, very interesting. It's just me today. Graham has sent lots of information, lots of notes, lots of research, as always, and we're going to present it right here. And on screen, we've got the 2 11s that the teams went with. We're going to go through this in a bit more detail in a sec. The first thing I actually want to show you is the match stats. Of course, just because Graham's not here doesn't mean we're going to do it any differently. Arsenal had 3 shots on target out of the 7. Man City had 4 shots on target out of 8. We had 45% possession to their 55%, a 44% field tilt, and an XG of 0.95. These numbers scream what a lot of the game was. A little bit... It never really caught, fire, caught life. What it did, though, I think it showed 2 teams that were tactically very fascinating to watch. I think it showed 2 teams that were sort of almost trying to stop each other playing, maybe before actually playing their football. And that's not what you normally associate with Pep and Arteta. It's normally stick to our principles. But there's a level of respect there, and I think both teams kind of cancel each other out. The first 15 minutes of the game, I thought City were, I'd say scintillating, because they weren't really testing Ramsdale too much. But that Ben White header that Alvarez nearly scores from, that Rodri shot from distance, it felt like City was sort of on our on our case a little bit. And Arsenal, I think did well just to see through that 15, 20 minutes before actually getting a little bit more on the ball. And then it became this really fascinating tactical battle. And I said on the watch along that this is the kind of game that you're either going to go, it's really boring, it's really dull, load of rubbish, or you're going to go, that was tactically fascinating. Now, why was it tactically fascinating? Let's get the 11s back up on screen. Let's start with Arsenal. Declan Rice was playing that Granit Xhaka role, we keep calling it. He was playing in that position that Granit Xhaka would normally occupy, and the idea is getting forward as well. And he did get forward at times, but maybe in a slightly different way, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Then you got, of course, Ødegaard captaining the side. Saka was fit. Timber in at left back, and the big one is Kai Havertz leading the line. He, I think, had a very, very good game, and I know people are going to talk about things like the missed chances, especially that big one where Saka cuts it back to him. And don't get me wrong, he should have scored. Apologies for my cough, by the way, everyone. Don't get me wrong, he should have scored, Kai Havertz. I'm not saying he shouldn't have, but I thought it was a link-up play, and what he gave us tactically in this game was really, really good. I don't just mean on the ball, but off the ball as well. Man City, you'd expect it to be De Bruyne. It was De Bruyne who started at the Etihad when they smashed us 4-1 in that role, but otherwise, very, very similar. In fact, I think the whole back 4 and midfield 4 was exactly the same. It was just De Bruyne that would normally be behind Haaland, and of course he caused us a lot of damage at the Etihad back in, was it April or May? I think it was April. Ortega comes in, and those are the 2 11s. But let's talk about the Arsenal press, because I thought Arsenal's defensive shape was really, really interesting. Where is it? Here we go. Arsenal defensive shape. So, essentially, Arsenal have gone in previous games man-to-man. In fact, we can sort of display it. Arsenal went to Anfield and they went to the Etihad, and they did it Tottenham 2 years ago, playing man for man on the press. And I've not always liked it. I've always said that Arsenal need to be a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more pragmatic. Let's get them all into place. And there you go, you got them there. So this is the kind of thing, I think, if you asked me to predict what Arteta's defence plan would be, I think I'd have said probably something like this. I think the front 2 would have pressed onto the centre-backs, you'd have your 4, and then the back 4 would press onto whatever men they matched up to. And that's essentially what I would have seen coming. Of course, Stones sometimes come into midfield, would Havertz follow him. We didn't get that, though. We actually got Arsenal playing in a much, much deeper shape. Something like this, where essentially you had your back 4 that were largely in line, very, very tight together. Partey was dropping in to help as well. And Rice had this really important role. This is where his stamina, his engine, his ability to get up and down the pitch is huge, because he was dropping back a lot of the time, but he was also pressing from the front. Let's do one thing at a time and talk about this condensed Arsenal shape. They were quite tight in this area of the pitch. They ensured that City couldn't play through them too easily. We know that they are the masters of picking out players in the pockets, the likes of Alvarez, Kovacic. Last season it would have been Gundogan, it would have been De Bruyne. We didn't get that in this game because Arsenal were very condensed in this area of the pitch. What we also got, though, is Here we go. Oh, right, we've got it here. Is Havertz not pressing fully onto John Stones, but ensuring that there wasn't an outball to Rodri. So what I mean by this is, Rodri for me was City's best player. We've actually got some numbers that will prove that in a second. And normally I think City want to play through him to then kick-start attacks, or they'd form more of a back three. Stones would would come forward, and it'd be Stones and Rodri beginning attacks. Of course, you've got the centre-backs who can play. In this game in particular, it felt like the best stuff came from Rodri. But between Havertz, Ødegaard and Rice, they just made sure to close down that space. But the way it looked to me, and obviously I can't know for sure whether this was the plan, but the way it looked to me was that the idea was, don't almost, it was baiting Man City. Don't make it so obvious that we're man marking and following all over the pitch. Almost invite that pass, but cut the lanes if you can and be able to win it back if you can as well. Because there were moments where Declan Rice stepped forward and was able... Do you remember that ball where they did ping it into Rodri? And Declan Rice basically got in front, forced a bad pass from Rodri that went out for, I think it was a corner. You know, those are the kind of moments I mean where Arsenal were just teasing Man City into it. And again, when he would get the ball, they were happy to drop into a shape. So here we've got Rodri getting the ball. And again, at this point, Saka would drop in, Marte would drop in. They're about to cross the halfway line and invite long passes like this one we see out to Akanji. We all remember that move when it went out to Akanji, one of their biggest threats in the game. But Saka and Martinelli would do really, really well to get back. In fact, one of the ways City, I think, struggled, or at least tried to get around us, we saw a lot more of Walker overlapping. We see that in the Cole Palmer goal that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And of course, we see that in the Akanji move where he's getting forward. He's not even that kind of marauding left back in terms of style, but Rodri picked out that pass because they felt going around the outside was going to be one of the best ways to unlock us, because we had such a solid middle of the park. You couldn't play through us, and every time they went to Haaland, he wasn't winning his battles, and Jules, Gabriel and Saliba were brilliant in that. And Arsenal were really coming out on top centrally. Partey and Rice were starting to enjoy some football, and City started looking over the top and on the outside. But again, I think Arsenal was somewhat inviting that. So I talked about Havertz and his importance here on the press, his ability to, like I said, he wasn't really harassing Stones, trying to ensure that he blocked all his passes, but he was making sure he was positioned right in front of Rodri to make sure that they couldn't always play through him, and when they did, he didn't have the space to do everything he wanted. The other reason he was a massive outlet is because of this. Let me show you here. Havertz hold-up play. Now again, I've sort of loosely recreated a moment in the match, which we'll remember, Saliba, and he goes long to Havertz. Now what he does here, it's very good hold-up play, but he gave us an outball Havertz because he's 6'3", because he's quick, and he actually showed that athleticism, that strength, that ability to put himself about. Now, I never really saw that at Chelsea. It's refreshing to see he was able to do that in this game, because Saliba looks for the outball here to Havertz, and he was able to battle with the likes of Diaz. And then when that was happening, the likes of Ødegaard, Saka, sometimes Martinelli, Rice, they were there to pick up. Partey often as well. They were there to, able to pick up the loose ball and bypass this whole midfield. When you look at the way we played against Man City in the previous games, it felt like we were trying to play at the back. In fact, if we just go back to this moment here with Saliba on the ball, I'm not sure that in previous games he doesn't just go to Gabriel there, or Rams there, or that Partey doesn't drop into this space, or that Ødegaard doesn't come deeper. The fact is, when he has that ball, if I can move it, there we go, he's actually going along to Havertz, who's come into those spaces, and there are players around him. Havertz, I think, was a big part of our success in that first half, and our first half, I thought, was quite significantly better than our second half, but the second half wasn't bad at all either. And proof that this was actually part of the plan, or certainly something we've had more success with than in sort of recent year, or in recent games against Man City. If I just pull this up here, this stat here, here are our long balls, the successful long balls, long ball attempts, and then success rate in the 4 games we played against Manchester City. Again, we've got that 1-0 defeat in the FA Cup, we've got the 3-1 defeat at home at the at the Emirates, and the 4-1 defeat at the Etihad back a couple months ago. But in the first half of this City game, out of 20 attempted long passes, 10 of them were far more efficient with a 50% success rate, and I believe Kai Havertz is a big part of that. Of course, we didn't have Jesus for these other 2 games. Eddie led the line, but in this game, again, Jesus did, but again, getting up to full fitness. And I want to say that the long ball was not just a way to get out of the Man City press, but also a way to get us up the pitch in sort of cleverer ways and try and pin them back and bypass that midfield. Eddie Nketiah, when he came on, I thought did a really good job and did really well running the channels, trying to just hold up the ball and allow us time to get up that pitch. And yeah, Eddie Nketiah, when he came on and Havertz sort of dropped deeper, I thought had a good impact with that as well. So all of this, what did it do for Arsenal? I think it stopped City and their midfielders playing the kind of football they'd have wanted to play. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Let's bring up this graphic here. Here we go. So big up to Graham. We've sent this over. It's an Opta analyst set of stats, the attacking sequence involvement. So you've got the players here who had the most attacking sequence involvements. The red bar is their shots, the purple bar is their chance created, and then any white bars are the build-up to shots. Any time they've had a part in the build-up that's led to a shot for their team. Now, it's no surprise to me that the 4 top ones are Arsenal players with Saka, White, Saliba and Martinelli. Interesting, you've got a right back and a centre back there, but Saka and Martinelli were having some joy and really enjoying themselves. Rodri, again, it doesn't surprise me that he's the highest for City because he was the one, he gets 2 shots away, but he's also there. He looked like the one most likely to unlock us in some way, shape or form. And I'm glad we had a plan for him. And I'm glad Rice stepping up into Rodri and Havertz covering was part of that. He had a largely good game. I'm glad he missed a penalty as well. But it's interesting how, look at all these, what's this, a top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's about the top 10 and you haven't got a single, attacking midfielder. You don't, Bernardo, Grealish, Kovacic, Alvarez, who to be fair is a striker, would drop in. For City, that's not good enough. That's not what you associate with Man City. Typically, they're very crafty midfielders that get on the ball and make things happen and are very, very much at the heart of all their best football, from build-up to creating chances to getting shots away, and they weren't, which shows you how effective Arsenal's plan to sort of press correctly, drop into the right shape and go long actually helped really kind of take away the involvement of those City players in midfield and, generally stop them having a massive impact. Having said that, and the reason I paused is because, of course, Phil Foden does get a massive piece of involvement in the Man City goal that puts them 1-0 up. 1-0 up. Before I talk about that, though, I thought there was another interesting thing. Before that, we did see some substitutions for Arsenal, and I thought they were quite interesting because Martinelli came off, as did Timber, and we saw Kieran Tierney come on, and we saw Leandro Trossard. Where is he? It's a big squad, isn't it? You can see why they're talking about lots of sales. Right, so Trossard came on and Tierney came on. What I think is interesting about this, and I wish I could say it was my observation, but a shout out to Cass, who helps with a lot of stuff here at AFTV. He was talking about how Trossard coming in and maybe getting him closer to goal and having a Kieran Tierney that could overlap was Arteta sort of almost exploring a different way to maybe open up Man City. I think the reason that's interesting is because Declan Rice, while he did get forward to press sometimes into these areas, and while we did see the odd underlap, he actually did drop into these areas to receive the ball as well to allow Timber to get up the pitch. Of course, we've got Tierney here because we're representing something else, but Timber was able to get up on that left-hand side at times as well, and a big part of it was Rice coming in and covering that spot in the way Granit Xhaka did in the early Arteta days. It'd be interesting to know, had we not gone 1-0 down so early, whether it would have been a different plan the way they used Tierney, because at that point then we go to a back 3, he makes a load of changes, Smith Rowe comes on, he has a good impact, Fabio Vieira comes on, Eddie Nketiah comes on, but it'd have been interesting if still at 0-0, not wanting to contribute, or should I say commit everything forward, whether we'd have seen Trossard tucking into those spaces and Tierney getting forward a little bit more. And we've said that over pre-season we've seen where Tierney can have maybe a little bit more of an impact in this team this season than he did last season. Interesting to see that that could have been a part of the plan for this game, but like I said, we then concede the goal and that changes, I think, everything in terms of the way Arteta is then going to try and chase a goal back. So let's talk about that one, the City goal. Bring it up here. So I've broken this in 2 parts. The reason I've broken it in 2 parts is because I don't think we need to talk much about that middle phase. The first phase is Diaz here on the ball in the Arsenal press. This one is more man for man. And what, unfortunately, a tactical plan is never going to do justice. Let's get an arrow here. It's never going to do justice to how big this gap is here between Partey and Rice. Watch it on the screens when you go watch the replays. There is such a massive gap between 2 central midfielders that were very, very tight and very, very difficult to play through in the first half. Then at this point, the game was getting a little bit more stretched. Maybe Arsenal was sensing that they could get a winner. City were getting a little bit better. And, let's cancel that. and they cut through us. And we saw actually quite a lot of this in pre-season, but we didn't see it much in this match, which was really encouraging. But the one time they did, it worked out really well for them. So here's Diaz playing it into Foden. Partey's gone in, and like I just said, it doesn't do justice to how big. I can only suggest you guys go and sort of actually go and look at the highlights. Now that we've won, at least you can enjoy it. But it doesn't do justice to how big that gap is. In fact, let's just do it like that. There is a really, really big gap between Partey and where he presses Foden and gets turned. I thought Partey was immense in this game, by the way. That was just his one bad moment. And Declan Rice, who's following Palmer, because they've mixed it up a little bit. Walker's getting really high up the pitch, as is Akanji, and they're going a little bit more man for man here. And I think Arsenal have just been done by City in this situation. Let's get rid of all that, and watch back the goal. So here, I'm now moving everyone up the pitch. Here they come. Up, and I want to just show this moment here, where Tierney's got the ball. So, not Tierney, Palmer. So Palmer's got the ball here, and this is the point at which he opens up his body. We help if that ball moves. It doesn't want to move, so I'm not going to show you. He opens up his body, and of course he finds the top corner here. But the point I want to make is that Kieran Tierney got some criticism from me on the watch along, and a few others as well, for his clearance isn't great, and that allows Palmer to pick up the second ball, and they go from there. Or is it De Bruyne? I can't remember. And then he doesn't really do enough to close down the shot. The one thing I'd say in Tierney's defence is Kyle Walker is literally about to... Let me see if I can get this working. Right. Kyle Walker is literally offering the other option, the overlap, and at that point he's pulled apart if he gets too close to Palmer. So I understand why there was a little bit of distance, but I do also think he, having slipped or whatever, I think he just panicked a little bit, and Palmer ultimately shows his quality. And it was good from Man City, but it all goes wrong really in the beginning with that kind of, you get the press wrong. And this is the thing, pressing is great, and we feel like every fan wants their team to play that kind of football, wants to press, wants to be on the front foot. But when you get it wrong, it can leave you really exposed in midfield, which is interesting because Arsenal had spent so much of that game being pragmatic, being a really good mid-block, not allowing too much through them. And the one time City do, they end up scoring. And that is just the fine margins against the very, very best teams. I want to talk as well about this player here, Leandro Trossard, who once again, played a massive part in pre-season. He's been, I think, the star of pre-season. I'm not including the Community Shield when I say that as pre-season fixtures, but he came on and had a really, really good impact as well. Some of the flicks and tricks, his sort of close control, I thought he was really, really special in the game when he came on. And we gave him a 5 out of 5 rating on the AFTV player rating on the website. Go check that out. He was really, really good. And I just felt when you need a goal, bring on a player like Trossard, who can score goals from distance, who can use his left foot and his right foot. The goal comes with deflected effort from his left foot, who's willing to just take chances and see what happens, who can play on the left, who can drop into midfield, who can lead the line. He can do so many different things. I think he's going to be such a massive asset. And I could see him playing in like 95% of Arsenal's games this season. I just don't know how many of those 95% of games he actually starts, if that makes sense, because we have so much quality. And I think that Martinelli-Saka sort of dynamic on the wings is here to stay, and you've got Jesus and Havertz just led the line, but I think Trossard will play a massive part, so well done to him. I also want to give credit to 2 other players who I thought were absolutely unplayable on the day. Let's bring them up. Yuri Timber, William Saliba. These stats come from Squawka, as you can see. 76 minutes on the pitch for Timber, 45 touches, 23 out of 25 passes completed, 4 times he won possession back, 3 duels, 2 interceptions, 2 clearances, not a single foul. Unbelievable performance from him. Saliba right up there as well, 96% pass accuracy, 86 touches, 74 passes, 6 passes into the final third, 6 times he won the ball back, 4 clearances won, 4 duels won, and 2 tackles made. I thought these 2 were absolutely sublime. Honestly, 2 of the best defensive performances I've seen from Arsenal players in the last couple of years. They were absolutely immense. Timber, I think at first Bernardo Silva looked really bright. I was having not having some joy, but definitely looked dangerous. Timber very quickly stepped up and learned very quickly on the job, on the day, what he needed to do, was able to start having a lot of joy. He was very good going forwards. And William Saliba, I mean, wherever he shouldn't dribble, he'll just do it because it's more efficient for the team and he can pull it off. Even though almost anyone else would get tackled trying to do it, he can pull it off. That's how brilliant he is. Defensively, he was immense. And Erling Haaland registered an XG of 0.00 because William Saliba and Gabriel were so good on the day. And I thought those 2, along with Trossard's appearance off the bench, Ramsdale did well, Thomas Partey was superb. I mean, Odegaard was brilliant. There's so many brilliant players in this performance. But yeah, I just think those two in particular really, really stood out for me. And then, of course, it goes to penalties. And I wish I could take credit for this as well, but I can't, so I won't. Rory Talks Football with a tweet. Go follow him at Rory_talks_ball. We've had him on AFTV before. He made this point that, we know that, well, I mean, let me come in and say this. Arsenal have had 2 penalty shootouts in pre-season before the Wembley Community Shield, and that was their third one. They lost to Man United, they won the Emirates Cup shootout, and then they won this one. And actually, what's funny to me is we all did the whole, what a load of nonsense, why are they doing penalties, what a waste of time, if you lose, you lose, what's the point? But I think the clubs want to get this bit of practice in there as well for pre-season. I think it's very hard to replicate a packed stadium, anticipation and a pressure. And people might say, what's the pressure, scoring a penalty in the Emirates Cup or scoring in New Jersey against Man United? There's still fans watching you and 80,000 eyes on you, 80,000 pairs of eyes on you, and you're expected to deliver. And I think Vieira, having missed that penalty against United, I think will be really, really happy. And I think we're all really happy for him that he got the winner to confirm the Community Shield. But anyway, Rory mentions here the penalty wait times and saying that it's no surprise really that, and it's no fluke that the way we won it is taking our times with penalties. Odegaard with a 6-second wait time, Trossard 7, Saka 7, and Vieira 7 seconds as well. Taking their time, picking their spot, and executing it. Apparently, De Bruyne, Bernardo, and Rodri taking not taking as long, being far quicker with it, stepping up and taking their pens, and ultimately getting them wrong because perhaps they're a bit more rushed. He does stress as well that these are the seconds between the referee blowing the whistle and them taking it. But yeah, I think it's interesting. After that whistle went and they got the opportunity to step up and do it, the City players were far quicker than the Arsenal players. So yeah, really good observation there. That's pretty much it. Let's just remind ourselves of the team that went and finally beat Man City. Yes, it wasn't over 90 minutes. Yes, it took penalties. But finally, we got one over Man City. 3 other times this calendar year we've played them. We've lost all of them. And I actually don't think we've been that bad in them. The FA Cup away game, I thought we were good. The Emirates home game, I thought we were genuinely well worthy of winning that game. We ended up losing it 3-1. And in this game, I think we were well worthy of the win. When it comes down to ultimately the better chances, I think they did fall for us just. Foden, though, could have won it for them and made it 2-0. And it's a fine margin of football. If it's not a deflected effort, off a Kanji from Trossard's shot, then, what are we talking about here? The narrative might be slightly different. However, we did get over the line. We did win the Community Shield, and Arsenal have finally got one over Man City, despite what happened at the Etihad only, 3-4 months ago. So there you have it. Arsenal win the Community Shield. And are these tactics that we might see in the Champions League next season? More of a condensed, midfield block. Is it what it's going to take to actually go and win the league and get even more away wins and start to have a little bit more fun against Man City and get a little bit more wins? That is important to know as well. So I think Arteta's tried a few things differently here. Timber, Zinchenko's going to have to work for his place. We learned a lot, and Havertz leading the line was a pleasant surprise as well. Let me know your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet, and go check out all the other content. And let's get ready for a massive Premier League campaign that starts this Saturday. Of course, we've got it all covered here on AFTV.
Shop for AFTV merch at shop.aftv.co.uk. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat and Twitch. We've got content for every platform, so check it out.